Hello, this is a video that's going to be talking about Chapter 7, Physical Education, and how we can merge that in with music into your elementary classroom environment. The first thing we're going to talk about is Piaget, one of developmental theorist, and his different stages in his theory of development. And the first stage is going to be your sensory motor stage. That's going to be from 0 to 2. In your book on page 186, it goes through these stages. And if you look at stage 2, that's going to be your pre-operational stage from 2 to 7 years of age. Then we move on to our concrete operational stages from 7 to 11, and then the formal operations from 11 to 12. Now, within the classroom environment, depending on the age group that you're going to be working with, you may be working with 5-year-olds on all the way up to 12-year-olds, depending upon the age of the kids you have in the classrooms in kindergarten to 6th grade. And so when you think about the different kids and the ages and stages they're in, you need to know developmentally what they're capable of and what they can and cannot do. And so this is just going to be a little overview over Piaget's stages of development and how the kids work through those stages and what we need to do as teachers to be able to help them in their stages of development. So when we think about that, we're not going to spend any time on the sensory motor stage since that's the preschool stage. We're going to skip through that and go straight to our pre-operational stages. So when we think about our pre-operational stages, this is when the kids, if you have a glass, and the glass is, here's our glass right here, and it's tall, it's skinny, it's about this wide and about this tall. If they look at that glass and say it's filled a little over halfway full, about 3/4 full, then you have a glass sitting beside it that's shorter, that's wider, and is filled about halfway full. And you ask the children which glass has more, what do they typically say? Give you some thinking time, let you think about that for a moment. Which one would a child, so not us, which one would a child say has more in it, the tall, narrow one or the short, wider one? Typically, most children that are in the pre-operational age of thinking are going to say that the shorter, wider has less and the taller one has more because the tall class is larger, okay? Now, when we're thinking about the children as they're going through these different stages in their development, how they understand, they still think that if they perceive more, it's going to be more. But this is when we're starting to learn how to count. Okay, so when we're in preschool, we teach the children how to count by one-to-one correspondence. So if I have some items in my hand, I'm going to grab a few things right here. If I have a few items in my hand, say I have 4 pens. Okay, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4. 4 is my cardinal number. So if you go to your math for teachers class, you should be talking about cardinal numbers. The total number of the objects within a group is your cardinal number, the highest number that you count. Okay, and so if I have these really close together, it looks like there's not as many. If I spread them way apart, then a child is going to perceive more. Even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the group, they're still going to perceive that. That is a huge sign that they're still in that pre-operational stage of thought. And that usually goes, as I said, from 2 to 7 years of age, up to about 2nd grade, okay? Then we move on to our concrete operational stages. This is when children should be able to say, look at a group and be able to perceive 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 4 there. Doesn't matter if they're close together. Doesn't matter if they're spread apart. There's only 4. So they are now in that concrete operational stage. This is when they can understand rules for games, when they can understand language rules. This is when we're bringing in sentence rules, we're bringing in if we're doing a physical education activity, you explain what the rules are to that activity. They understand what they should and should not do at this stage, where prior, it was a little bit harder. Sometimes you had to repeat things more often. When they hit the concrete stage of development, you shouldn't have to repeat as often, but you're still going to have some repetition because that's how kids learn, okay? Now, when we move on to the formal operation stage, ages 11 to 12, this is when kids are able to really rationalize their thought. They're able to work through hypothetical situations. This is when the science fair projects really make sense. When we do science fair projects with the younger kids, a lot of times they don't understand what they're actually doing. They may have fun with it, or it may seem kind of, it's hard with some of them, but the older they get, they understand, oh, I need to do this in order to do this. And so they're able to reason through a situation. They're understanding more when you explain to them how they're going to complete a task in the classroom. This is the formal operations, and that is from ages 11 to 12. This is just a really, really short overview of the Piaget's theory and stages. Okay, now, how do we transfer that to physical education? Well, the younger the children are, the more information you're going to have to give them, the less rules you're going to have, because they can't understand the rules. If you tell a group of 5-year-olds separate into 2 groups, what do? They go with their friends. They don't divide into 2 groups. It's like leading or herding cats, okay? If you tell a group of children that are in the concrete age of development, 7 to 11 years of age, they're going to more be able to do that, but still you may not have even groups. When you hit formal operations, if you ask the kids to divide themselves into 2 groups and you want them to do it equally, they're going to divide themselves equally. Now, it may not be nice about it, but they will divide themselves equally, okay? And you will know you'll have 2 different groups. You're going to have some people who are unhappy because they're in this group. I want to be in this group with my friend, and my friend's over there. Well, it's too bad. We're all going to divide into groups, okay? So sometimes we have to kind of work with the kids and interact with them, and we can't all be in the same group all the time. We have to be able to share and get along with others. So that kind of brings everything, this theory, to the physical educational realm. Now, one of the things that it goes through and talks about during this chapter is as children grow and as children learn, they go through some different stages and behaviors in here. Some of them start out talking about some sensory motor stages, reflexive period, where we have suckling and different things like that. And we're going to skip through that. That's not really that important for you to know at this time. That's what we focus on early. We're focused on elementary education. What I want you to really focus on is when we start working with children, when we get them, they're already able to, most of them are able to run. They've been through the crawling stages. They should be able to walk. We're working on fine motor activities with them. Still in elementary, we're still working on guiding their large motor movement. And in guiding the movement, it's going to happen with different kids in different ages and stages. Okay, you're going to have about 3 to 4 months of variance in typical normal behavior and skill development with elementary age children. Now, just like you can have a group of 5-year-olds, you have 10 5-year-olds, and they're going to be 3 to 4 months apart in their development, depending upon when their birthday is and where they are developmentally. Okay, you may have a child that is very young but is very physically active and is able to move and do things a child that is 4 months older is not able to do. It just depends on their bodies, how much activity time they get to be able to do physical fitness activities and also fine motor activities, and how often they're able to be, if they're gaming or if they're on the phone or if they're on an iPad. The longer they're on those different types of devices, the less time they're actually going to get to spend in physical activity. So there's going to be a lag in that physical activity. Okay, so it goes through and talks about that in this chapter. Now, something else I want to talk to you about is, in the physical chapter talks about locomotor control, non-locomotor control, and manipulative skills. These are really important when you're talking with kids in the classroom. You want them to be able to understand these 3 skill sets. Locomotor means your body is in motion. Okay, so I'm going to give you some, I'm going to stand up and demonstrate this with you, trying to get my phone situated where you can see what I'm doing. So when you have your body is in motion. That means I am moving in motion. I'm running from one place to the other. I'm skipping, I'm hopping, I'm jumping from one place to another. When we have non-locomotor control, that means I'm sedentary in one spot. I'm standing. My feet are not moving. They may be set close together or they may be shoulder length apart. Then with those children, I'm going to move my phone up on my drink. Maybe that'll be better if it doesn't fall. Okay, so then we have our kids that are non-locomotor. We're going to be stretching and moving. We may be bending. We may be hopping in place, but we do not move out of our space. This is me, myself, and my space. So think about if I have a hula hoop around me and I swing it around. This is all my space, and no one else should be in my space except for me. This is my personal space compared to group space. If I invite you into my personal space, that is okay. So this is something kids learn early on. Personal space compared to group space or classroom space. Then we have our manipulative skills. Manipulative skills is when we have an example, and I think I have over here in a bag, I have a bean bag. Okay, manipulative skills is when I have it's St. Patrick's Day, so I have to use green. Okay, and so I have a bean bag here, and when I'm manipulating an object, I'm taking an object and I'm going to be throwing it through space. My body is going to be moving with the object. And so as I move with the object, that's manipulating. I'm going to let it go and it's going to land. I may be tossing to and from somebody else. I may be tossing up and down. I may be balancing on my shoulder. I may be balancing on my head, or I may be balancing on the top of my hand, walking around an environment, okay? Those are all what we call manipulative skills. Look at this. If this was a ball, okay, I can throw a ball, I can catch a ball. All of that is manipulation of an object. It can be a frisbee. It can be anything you're throwing or catching or manipulating in space. Now, I could do a manipulative non-locomotor movement where I'm standing in one space and I'm tossing an object to a friend, and that friend's going to toss it back to me. Then I may do a locomotor manipulative skill where this is a soccer ball and I'm kicking the soccer ball on the field as I'm running. That is locomotor manipulative movement. So we have three types of movement: manipulative skills, non-locomotor, and locomotor. Okay, those are three things you need to know, and how we could bring that into the classroom and how you can include that in the music classroom. So this is the physical education part of that. I'm going to move you back down to where I was sitting originally and find my chair. Okay, so that is movement in a nutshell. And so if you need more information on that, you can go to the book on page 186, and it gives you a little bit more information there. They also, in this chapter, this is a shorter chapter than what a lot of our chapters are. In here, it also goes through and talks about physical activity. Now, as I said in another video, we have a huge problem with obesity here in the United States, particularly in Arkansas. We have high rates of obesity. And so one of the things that we need to combat obesity is doing physical activities. We need to get the kids moving in the classroom as well as in the physical education and on at recess. And so the ways we can do that is to have them to be able to move around the classroom as much as possible, but in a structured way. And so instead of having the kids hand their papers up front to back or back to front, and then one person bring the table, have them all have a certain area that they're moving around in to go turn the papers in. If they're getting up and turning their papers in, that's physical activity. It may not mean a lot, but a little bit is better than none at all when it comes to getting the kids to be physical in the classroom. It goes through and talks about in your book